Okay, just looking at some problems from exercise 5B, theoretical probability. The first one I just want to look at is question 4. An event has a probability between 50% and 1. Remember, 1 is 100%. So remember, probabilities range from 0 to 1. 50% is... So actually I'll put a half first and then 50%, okay? So I'll just do the fractions first. Remember, 1 is 100%. So probabilities range between 0 and 1. Probability of a half is when there is a 50-50 chance, okay? That's the same as a probability of 50%. Now, just using the language of probability, a probability of 0 is impossible. A probability of 100% is certain. And then if you're anywhere between 50% to 100%, or from a half to 1, that is likely. Of course, the closer you are to 1, that would be very likely. If you are less than 50%, we write that the probability is unlikely. And then if it's very close to 0, it's very unlikely. Okay, so just remembering that language. Okay, so we have impossible for 0, 1 probability of 1 is certain, or 100%, remembering that probabilities range from 0 to 1. Okay, so question 4, an event has a probability between 50% and 1, so between 50% and 1, it is going to be likely. Question 11, in a bag of marbles, 30% are red and 10% are blue. What is the chance of randomly picking a marble that is either? So it says either red or blue. So the probability of red is 30% and the probability of blue is 10%. So probability of either red or blue is 30% plus 10%, which is 40%. So you would just add those two together. Okay, question 12 should be fine. Remember, a 25% probability is a 1 in 4. So it's a probability of a quarter. If the chance of drawing out a black marble is a quarter, you need 1 black for every 4. It's obviously not jar D. It cannot be jar C. We'd have to see how many jars in jar B. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other colors and 2 black. So that is 2 black. Probability of black for jar B is 2 out of 8, which is a quarter. So the answer to that one is jar B. Look, most of you got that right anyway. Question 16, the chance of randomly drawing out a white marble from a jar is 2/3. So it's obviously not going to be jar A because probability of white is 2/5. It's not going to be jar B because there's 4 white out of a total of 7. You can have a look at jar C, probably not. Less than half of jar C is white. Remember, 2/3 is more than a half. It's more than likely going to be jar D. Let's just have a look at that. How many white? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 white out of, and there are 3 other colors. So probability of white, we've got 6 white and 3 other colors. So 6 plus 3 is 9. Probability of white is 6/9, dividing them both by 3. The numerator and denominator dividing them by 3, you get probability of 2/3. So it's jar D. Just quickly looking at the last few. Question 17. Discs are labelled with the numbers 1 to 20 and they're placed in a bag, and 1 disc is drawn out at random. Probability of a number greater than 17, so greater than 17 means pulling out 18, 19 or 20. So therefore the probability of greater than 17, so we write probability of greater than 17 is 3 out of 20. Question 18, in a box there are 3 blue, 5 red and 2 yellow marbles. Probability of selecting a blue at random, again just totaling those up. Most of you got this right. So 3 plus 5 plus 2, we have 10 marbles. Probability of a blue, we've got 3 blues, so that's 3. Probability of blue is 3/10, and as a decimal, that's 0.3. Now for question 19, a few people got this one wrong. So how many black marbles are need to be added to the jar to make the probability of randomly choosing a black marble to equal 2/3? So if you want the probability of black to equal 2/3. Let's just write, some equivalent fractions for 2/3. If we multiply the numerator and the denominator both by 2, we get 4/6. So that's another fraction that equals 2/3 is 4/6. So at the moment we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marbles. If we add one more black, we're going to have half black, so that's not going to work. Let's look at another equivalent fraction to 2/3. Instead of multiplying both numerator and denominator by 2, that didn't work for us. Let's multiply numerator and denominator both by 3. So let's say 2/3 is also the same as 6/9. At the moment there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marbles in the jar. So we've got 5 marbles. We'd have to add 4 more black to give me 9. So that means we've got 2 black and another, if we add another 4 black, so 2 plus 4 is 6 black out of a total of 9. So 6 black out of 9. So if we add another 4 black, as I said, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 black out of, and we have 3 other colors. So the probability of black, if we add 4, would be 6 out of 9, which simplifies to 2/3. So how many more black marbles? It would be 4 black marbles. Okay, we would add 4 black marbles. Question 20. Discs labelled with the numbers 1 to 20 are placed in a bag and one disc is drawn out at random. The chance of showing a number that is a multiple of 4. Girls, you should remember your multiples of 4. So that's counting up in 4s, or doing your 4 times tables, multiplication tables. So multiples of 4, 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 5 is 20. So the chance of a number that is a multiple of 4, we've got 4 chances out of, 5 numbers there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, out of 20, which is a quarter. Question 23. The pet shop has a mouse cage containing 30 mice. So there are 30 mice in the cage, and we know that 40% of the mice are brown. So 40% are brown. So what is 40% of 30? We'll just, we won't work that out yet. We know that 20% are white, so we've got 20% are white. And we know that the rest are piebald, which is mixture of brown and white. So the others are brown/white. Now the others, if we've got 40% brown, 20% white, that's 60% so far. So the other 40% are piebald, which is mixed brown and white. Now it says a new shipment of white mice is added to the cage. And the question is, how many mice are added if the chance of choosing a white mouse at random is now 50%? Well, let's just see how many of each mouse we've got in the first place. Now, 40% of the 30 mice are brown, so 40% of 30 is, that's going to be 12. You can just calculate that out. 20% of 30, that's 6 white mice. And the other 40% of 30, that's 12, because we just write 40% of 30, right? And we get 12. 20% of 30, that's a fifth of 30, or 20 over 100 times 30, that's 6. Let's add these up. 12 plus 12 is 24, plus 6 is 30. So that's good. That's what we originally had. 12 brown, 6 white, and 12 brown white, which is called piebald. It says a new shipment of white mice is added to the cage. How many mice are added if the chance of choosing a white mouse at random is now 50%? Now, remember, we've got 30. So we've got, at the moment, we've got 6 white, and the total is 30. At the moment, we've only got 20%, 20% white. Now let's add some more white. Let's say we added another 10. Let's say we added another 10, add another 10 white. That gives me 16 white out of a total of, there will now be, so if I have 6 white out of a total of 30, if I add another 10 white, I've now got 16 white, and the total is now 40. That's not quite half, so let's add a few more. Let's add another 2 white, for example, that gives me 18 white out of 42. Now, 16 out of 40, 18 out of 42, and let's say I added, say, another 4 to this. That would be 22. Remember, I'll add another 4 here. That's out of 46. So 22 out of 46, that's not quite half. Let me add another 2. That gives me 24, and add another 2 here. That gives me 48. So 24 is half of 48. So let's just check what I seem to have added. I seem to have added 10 and 2 and 4 and 2. So I seem to have added, that's 18. Let's just check again if that works. So I had 6 white and a total of 30. So if I add 18 white, I've now got 24 white. And if I add 18 to the total, I've now got 48 in total. Yes, that is correct. 24 out of 48 is a half, which is 50%. So how many mice are added? It would be 24 white mice. Sorry, how many white mice? 24 white mice are added. That we have learned how to do equations. What we could do is the probability of white at the moment is 6 out of 30. Now, if we want the probability of white to equal a half, what we really want is 6 plus a certain amount x over 30. Now, I'm going to add, so I'm adding some white mice. So I've got 6 plus x, but the total will now be 30 plus x. That is equal to we want that to be equal to a half. Now, you can write that as 0.5 if you want. So, but see, you actually haven't learned how to solve equations like this yet. So I can go 6 plus x equals, now it's 6 plus x divided by 30 plus x. Opposite of dividing by 30 plus x is to multiply by 30 plus x. You'll learn how to do this next year anyway. But for those of you that know how to do equations, this isn't a bad way to go, or I could have written a half there as well. So 6 plus x is a half times 30 is 15, and a half times x is a half x. And then I could just solve. So I've got x minus a half x equals 15 minus 6. So 1 minus a half, that's a half x, is 9. And so x would be 9 divided by a half, which is 18. And that is the answer we had before, that we added 18. So those of you, remember, you don't have to know how to do this. And I could have written a half as well for those that know how to cross multiply. But this is another way that it could be done if you're not going to use the guess and check method. Okay, now for question 24. It says there are 35 items in the lucky dip. And the chance of picking a balloon at random from the lucky dip is 1/7. So the probability of a balloon equals 1/7. So that means if the probability of a balloon is 1/7, 1/7 of 35 means that there are 5 balloons in that dip. Okay. Now the question is, how many balloons would need to be added to make the chance of picking a balloon at random to equal a quarter? So remember, we've got 5 balloons at the moment, and we have a total of 35 items. Now we want the probability of a balloon to be a quarter. So we want the probability of a balloon to equal a quarter. Now, a quarter is something like 10 out of 40, all right? That's just an example. So why don't if I've got 5 balloons out of a total of 35, why don't I just add another 5 balloons, and my total will now be 35 plus 5 is 40. So if I've got 5 balloons already and I add another 5 balloons, I end up with 10 balloons. And my total items, if I have 35 items and add 5 more, I've got 40. So therefore, we do have that the probability of a balloon will now be 10 out of 40. So how many balloons would need to be added? We add 5 balloons. Okay. All right. And question 25 is fairly straightforward. Most of you got this right. A box contains 60 pencils, and if you select a pencil at random, there's the probability of it being red is you have 5/6 of a chance that it's red. How many red pencils? So that would just be 5/6 times 60. And if you have a calculator, great, you can work it out. If you don't, you can just do some cancelling. 6 goes into 10, into 60, 10 times, 5 times 10, there would be 50 red. Okay, that's the end of the problems in this exercise.